when you were running and gunning, trying to find a place to hunt deer, I'm assuming you were looking for kind of the traditional winter scouting, spring scouting stuff, last year's sign, pinch points, access points, all that good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Looking for a lot of pinch points, and the two places that I turkey hunted a lot, with the intention that I knew I was going to probably deer hunt there a lot this fall. There's a lot of big ridges, and so I was basically trying to find, when you have a big block of timber like that, it's hard to figure out where the deer, like where they travel a lot, because it's all timber. But there was a couple really big ridges and a couple pinch points in there, and I found some really good buck bedding areas. Actually, jumped a lot of bucks in those areas. Found some sheds, found a lot of old rubs, and some old scrapes in there. So I feel pretty confident that I know where those bucks will be this fall cruising through there. And there's some really narrow ridges and some really deep ditches, and that actually made the areas where I would look to hunt when I get there, it narrows that down a lot, because they have to cross between those places to get from food to bedding. So
you're looking at the kind of bluffy terrain you're in. I mean, this is what I spent last night doing. I drew my Iowa tag this year, and I'm hunting the same kind of stuff probably, or I would assume the terrain, because I've been to your area, and I'm looking at the same thing, going, okay, lots of ridges, lots of bluffs, lots of up and down valleys, and some steep places where there's going to be a limited amount of travel. And I think we have overplayed the rut pinch point terrain funnel hand and underplayed the season long pinch point. And we don't, maybe it's just a cognitive dissonance there, but there are places out there that are unbelievable pinch points and funnels, especially in the terrain you're talking about, that the deer use all season long. It's not just go sit there and catch a buck, on November 7th. And what you're talking about is tying in, all right, spring scouting. Now I know where the bucks like to live, and now I know where these places are where deer probably have to cross these ravines and will probably travel these ridges. And you're piecing together something that could be valuable to you every day of the season.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, these, like you said, these are places where, and even sitting there during turkey season, watching does and some young bucks and stuff, actually moving through these places gives me more confidence that there will be mature deer at some point during the fall are going to move through there. So, but yeah, one of them is just a huge ditch that runs up to a really long ridge, and it's like the deer can't. The only way across from point A to point B is to go up and around that ditch, because there's no way they're going to cross it unless they're spooked. So it's just a spot like that. I mean, it's really good in the rut, but it's all year. That's the deer going to walk around the head of that ditch, and it just makes a I don't know how many acres that chunk of timber is, close to 400. It makes that hunt rather small, because it's like that's an area that deer are going to cross, because that main ridge runs through the majority of that property. And so guessing in the fall, bucks are going to run that ridge, and if they're running that ridge, they're going to go up around the head of that ditch. So
yeah,
that was one spot that I'm excited about that I found during turkey season. I also killed a turkey there.
Perfect. Was it a Jake?
It wasn't. It was a 2-year-old. He made me work a little bit, but I managed to get him. But
nice. You got to love 2-year-olds. Oh yeah. That kind of spot you're talking about is, it's such a good, useful thing to understand, because when you're sitting there looking at a hillside, like we were just fishing, we just fished a couple tournaments down on the Mississippi River, and you're in between bluffs there, just right past southern Minnesota, northern Iowa. And you can look at those hillsides and see some of those washouts on the sides. And I deal with that all the time. And what you're talking about there is you got this ditch, you got this washout, this gully, whatever you want to call it, and it scours out that hillside. And on the top and the bottom, there's usually a really good trail. And the top can be really good because it'll pinch tight and give you the chance to play that wind. But you can see those, obviously you can see them in person, but you can see those on X right now, 3D mapping on Google Earth, and just about call your shots. If you're in a place with decent deer densities, you can look at those and go, the top and the bottom are going to have good trails. And if you go in there, it's almost always right.
Yeah, you're 100% right there. And that's originally how I found those spots, and that's again why I turkey hunted there, is because I wanted to look. And having little kids at home, my turkey hunting is also my scouting day, so we have to take full advantage of that. But yeah, that was looking at maps. I've gotten a lot better, and I think I talked to you about this last year, but at looking at topo maps and looking at OnX and just the terrain features, and instead of seeing a 400-acre chunk of property, I find the spots like that pop up on a map, they're easy to see. And it's like, okay, this is where I'm going to spend my time scouting. And it's been effective. And I really like those ditches because it gives me access. I can walk all the way up that ditch and be kind of low, less disturbance, I guess, if deer do end up crossing the ditch behind me or something. And I think the thermals I'm not smart enough to figure all that out, but I think thermals work well too, because they tend to go down the ditch, and then anything crossing that, the head of the ditch above you is usually going to be not downwind of you. So,
yeah, it gives you, not only does it give you the chance to play the prevailing winds a lot of times, because your wind might be blowing way out over a valley and totally not going to affect anything that's anywhere near you, at least bow range. Mm-hmm. But it does give you that chance too to play the thermals, and those kind of setups. It's probably more common to go on the top of the ridge. I think people are just more comfortable there. I do a lot of morning setups. I mean, this is one of my early season tricks, is to take those suckers down into the bottom, and because then you got the thermals going up, and you can access the same way. It doesn't matter if you're going up or down. If you're in one of those little ditches, those deer are only going to cross in a few spots probably, and so you're mostly pretty good about leaving scent going down there. And you can use those to access morning stands in places you might not normally think. And, people will say, oh, you can't be in the bottom of a valley. The wind's too swirly. Like, man, I grew up hunting that stuff. And yeah, sometimes it swirls in there. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's very reliable. And knowing that little ditch, washout trick can open up a lot of possibilities for different places to hunt. And I suspect what you're finding in those spots is that not a ton of people are clued into that on public land. Yeah,
it seems like people overlook some of those spots, looking for a bigger, cut in the trees or road or something that makes a pinch point that you can see in person or on a map a lot easier. These are a little bit more subtle. And like you said about the bottom of the ditch, that's places I would have never hunted. And there's actually one of my 4 spots is the bottom of a ditch that leads out into some crop fields. And that was a spot that I discovered by accident, just because I was trying to spot and stalk a turkey that was 2 or 3 years ago, but found a really good deer trail at the bottom of that. And the wind forecast would have been completely wrong for me to sit there, but it was actually going down the ditch and down the creek. And so I was like, this is actually going to work. So I sat there and saw a lot of deer. And so that's on my list too. But yeah, spots like that. I've never seen anybody else hunt there. I've hunted that one for 2 years now and never seen anybody at the bottom of that.
Yeah. And the thing that really works to your advantage, you're talking public land in Missouri, but I've seen this in a bunch of different states. If there's state planted food plots, or there's crops on the public land, or like those nice openings you're talking about, you can just count on probably 80% of the pressure being there. And yeah, you might get somebody slipping back on a ridge that you might want to hunt because there's a bunch of oaks or they know what they're doing. But this kind of stuff where you're getting in there and you're reading the aerial photos, topo maps, all that good stuff, walking through there, finding the buck bedding areas, then you're finding these specific season-long pinch points. Every step of that process, you're leaving a little bit more of the competition behind. And, you might have somebody cruise through there small game hunting or something. It's public land, but you're putting yourself in a position where the deer want to go or have to go, and where people probably aren't going to go. It's genius.
Yeah, that's one thing. Didn't happen intentionally. It just, because I'm not smart enough to figure all that out, but ahead of time, but it did happen just through scouting and watching. I've learned a lot, through scouting the last few years, and that's things that keep coming up. It's like deer are consistently moving through these spots. I'm seeing a lot more deer than when like I said, if you sit on those big field edges, big crop fields, you'd see a few deer, but like the last couple of years, I've seen a lot more deer in these little pinch points because they have to go through there. And like you said, a lot of guys just kind of overlook that because they want to sit on the edge of that field and be able to see 200 yards instead of that one spot at the bottom of the draw, literally I can't see 40 yards, and it's thick at the edge of that, but it's like the deer have to go through there, and you can hear them coming, which is helpful. But it makes for fast action if a buck comes through. So